Hi everyone, so the first thing that you'll notice is my case is completely flipped upside down. This is one of the things I have to do to drain the system. I have to connect the hose on top of the fill port on my reservoir there, and in order to drain my system. Now I don't have a drain port, and so this is one of the disadvantages that you'll have. It's a lot more difficult to drain the system, though I think it looks, you have a lot more freedom when it comes to routing your tubing, so because you don't have to worry about putting a drain port in there. But for most people, they'll add a drain port somewhere. But for me, I didn't. So this is one of the things I had to do. I drained the whole system out. I cleaned out all the blocks, all the fittings. You can see there are my two graphics cards. I've cleaned out everything. So there's not one little speck of Mayhem's Aurora left in my system at all. And what I like to mention though, this is my tubing here is what it used to look like. This is the Primo Chill Pro LRT tubing. And even though I like the tubing a lot, it had some problems. So this is one of the problems here, and I thought it was kind of interesting. I took it apart, and you can see that it's just lined with gunk. I mean, it's just horrible. But if I take a Kleenex or a rag and I wipe it, you can see that just for the most part it comes off. You can still see the tubing is cloudy when I hold it up here. But so that's one of the things I did not like about this tubing. So I will be switching the tubing and the coolant. Okay, so first off, what I like to do is kind of put everything inside the case and do like a mock-up um, tube routing of what I want. Now, it always never works out, so just be advised that you'll probably will be changing it up a bit. But for now, this is what my tubing is. I got the pump down at the bottom. The reservoir will be feeding the pump. It will be going out the back there through that hole. And I'm planning on coming it either out of that hole or this other hole right there and hooking it into my 90-degree fitting there into my radiator, and then coming out of my radiator into this 120 millimeter radiator, and it'll be going out that radiator into my MOSFET block, and then out of the block into my CPU, and out of my CPU into my GPUs, and then out of my GPUs back into my reservoir. So that's the plan, but again, it never works out once you start putting the. I'm not going to say it never works out, but for the most part, I probably will be changing it up a little bit here. But for the most part, that's the tubing run that I'm considering on doing. And so we'll go ahead and start routing tubing. So like I've said before, I will not be using the Primo Chill Pro LRT tubing. I'm going to give this Durling tubing a shot. I heard a lot of great things about it. I was reading a lot of forums, and staining and stuff like that is, it's different for everybody. I'm not going to say that it's not going to stain this tube or whatnot, but since a lot of people had good results with this tubing, especially with Mayhem's coolant, I'm going to go ahead and give this a shot. So upon mounting my radiator, I forgot to put the fans on. So since I get this question asked a lot, I'm just going to briefly go over these fans and what they are. These are the Gelid Gamer Wing UV Blue fans. They're my favorite fans for a couple reasons. They're very quiet because they have this nanoflux magnetic bearing. They move a lot of air because they have a lot of static pressure, making them great for case fans or radiator fans. They're very easy to clean. The fan blade just pops right off, and they just look awesome. And so that's why I use them. They can be a bit pricey, but in my opinion, they're definitely well worth it. Thing to mention here is the non-LED versions spin at 1500 RPM, and the version that has the LEDs spins at about 1800 RPM. So what I did, I just clipped the LEDs out so they'd all be the same non-LED fans. So like I've said, you plan for something and just sometimes it never works out. And this is one of those cases. I don't know what I was thinking. First, I had a 90-degree fitting there, and then I wanted to mount a fan there, so I don't know what I was thinking that would work. But anyway, I made this weird looking fitting. What it is a 45-degree angle fitting connected to a 90-degree swivel angle fitting connected to another 45-degree angle swivel fitting. And so what this does is just lifts up that 90 degree and puts it right over the top of those fans. And as you can see, I got plenty of space now for my tubing. So what I did to kind of make my case look a little snazzy from the outside, I went ahead and bought these blue anodized screws. So it's about time we start routing my tubing. Now what I like to do is first route the tubing where it's the most difficult to get to in the first place, and that's usually in the back. Now, reason being is you put tubing in front of that, it's going to be a lot harder to work around to get your tubing back there in a little tight space. So what I did here is I first mounted the tubing to my MOSFET block, and what I like to do is use a paper towel to screw it on and also getting it in the right place because these compression fittings do cut your fingers up. So what I went ahead and did was I connected my 360mm radiator to my 120mm radiator with another interesting fitting I made. I know I just said that I connect the tubing in the back first. Well, I like to connect the tubing from the pump to my 360 rad last, and I do have some room there to play around with that. Okay, so what I went ahead and did was made this crazy looking loop from my MOSFET to my CPU there. Now, I wanted to talk about this because I did somewhat of an error in my last loop that I did, and that was I connected the MOSFET to my CPU straight down though, not that big wide loop that you see now. And what happened was, even though it looked good from outside the case with no liquid inside of it, when I put liquid inside and you start gaming and whatnot, your fluid heats up, and what happens is it weakens the tubing slightly. And what that did was it caused a slight kink in that loop there. And so I wanted to completely resolve that issue and not have to worry about that again. So what I went ahead and did is I made just this huge loop with my 245 degrees on my CPU and my MOSFET to resolve that issue. So here you can see me connecting my CPU going into my GPU. Now to get this perfect fit, what I do is I always make my tubing just slightly longer than what I need. That way I can just snip back any extra and till I find that optimal fit that I want. So here we are. What I did was I connected my GPU into my reservoir and also my reservoir going out and into my pump at the bottom there. Now again, nothing always works out the way that I initially want, and so like what I had to do was I had to remove those 45-degree angle that was coming out of my GPU there and replace it with just a straight compression fitting because I needed that extra 45 for my CPU and also that crazy looking fitting that I did. Now again, that's why it's always better to buy extra fittings than what you actually plan to use. Just in case something like this happens, it's always good to have a little extra, and it never hurts. So here's just an overall look at what I have so far. Now the rest, all I have to do is connect a tubing from the out on my pump into the inlet on my 360mm radiator. Okay, so here we have the whole loop completed. Here's just an overall look of what I done here. I'd like to thank all you guys for watching. Please comment, rate, subscribe, and then I'll have a couple more videos after this. And what I'm really excited about is I will be making my own color coolant with Mayhem dye and pastel. So I really hope you guys stay tuned for that. It's going to be really cool. That's going to be my next video, and then the video after that will be filling my loop. So again, thank you so much for watching, and take care.